This fall is the 100th season in BYU football history, and to celebrate the occasion, we're looking back at the 100 greatest players in BYU football history. And what's amazing looking at this list and putting it together, there's been so many great running backs in BYU football history. Yes, there's been Luke Staley, Tyler Algier. There's been some special guys. And one of those guys that's joining me now is one of the greats that really got it started, the factory of great running backs at BYU in the early days of the Lavelle Edwards tenure. That's Jeff Blanc. Jeff, appreciate you joining me here today to celebrate this list and this history of BYU football.
I'm honored, Mitch. Thanks for having me. This is special.
It really is. And Jeff, you played at BYU from 1973 to 1976. And I think a lot of people look at that as the beginning of Lavelle Edwards' time at BYU. You were right there to experience all of that.
Yeah, it was awesome. And just to see where we were and what the team had done in the years past, and then to start what we started was, the WAC championship, the first bowl game. I mean, those were great years, and Lavelle was, one of the best, just like a father to all of us.
You grew up in Boise, Idaho, and I'm curious, how did BYU get on your radar? Was it always a goal to go to BYU, or was there a real recruiting process from BYU to pitch to you to come to play for BYU?
I'll be honest with you, I had no knowledge of any BYU players or anything in my town, and I had a dentist by the name of Ralph Frogley who said he had sent my name and some films in to BYU. And then the next thing I know, Dave Cragthorpe shows up. And that was the summer, it was almost time to get out of school. In 73, I get a call from the principal's office. I'm in English. My English teacher says, "What have you done now?" I says, "Well, I have done nothing, I promise. But, you don't want to get a call to the principal's office." So I get there, and I open the door to the principal's office, and there stands a big timber of a guy by the name of Dave Cragthorpe. He looked like a tree, and I had no idea who he was, had never met him. And the principal said, "This man would like to talk to you about BYU football." And that's the first knowledge I ever had.
And what was running through your mind? Like, did you BYU? Where's that located? Like, what did you learn about it?
I'd never been to Provo, never been to the stadium. I had plans to go to Boise State, and that's all we ever thought of there at Bora High, where I was at, was playing for Boise State. And Dave Cragthorpe said, "Well, we're a bigger conference." They were in the Division I AA, Big Sky. He said, "We're in the WAC conference. It's quite a bit bigger conference." And he says, "Just do me a favor and take a trip." He said, "You won't believe the stadium and the backdrop of the mountains and the Wasatch Front and Timpanogos and stuff." And so I took a trip and fell in love with the place. Walked out onto the stadium and looked at that mountain back there, and it was kind of one of those deals that, wow, I really maybe going to have a chance to play here. It was great. I looked forward to every minute I had here. I couldn't wait to get here and get started. For
our listeners, everyone knows Lavelle, but Dave Cragthorpe maybe is a name that not many people realize, but a key person in the construction of BYU football. What was Coach Cragthorpe like?
My gosh, the guy was awesome, and he's really the reason I went to BYU. He convinced me, and he's like a father today to me, and I still talk to him weekly. My daughters both stayed in his basement going to Utah State. Him and Barbara and Kurt and Steve are like family to me. They actually put me up for a while at their house in Orem, and it's just been a long-lasting friendship, and very, very fortunate to have him in my life. And I got inducted into the Bora Hall of Fame a couple years ago, and him and Barbara showed up.
That's special.
It was amazing. Yeah, very special. So,
when did football become like your passion, and you took to football?
Well, I actually liked baseball better, and we had a good baseball team at Bora, and if I could have gone somewhere playing baseball, I thought about it. But since I was, 7, 8 years old, playing Optimus football. And I'd like to tell everybody, I didn't make all of this by myself. There were so many people that helped me along the way, Mitch. All of my Little League coaches, I know them personally. I've had a great run. I've never been on a losing team in my whole life. And, guys like Milt Clegg and Chauncey Martin and Carl Hickey, who started this Little League team called Straddle Room. And I'll tell you what, it was exciting. And somehow I was able to do it. and got into high school, and had some of the best coaches in the world there. At D. Pankratz, who was an All-American at Idaho State, he was our head coach. Vic Mann, and I mean, my gosh, there were so many of them. But I just wish every kid had the opportunity that I had to have a coach put their arm around you and say, we're going somewhere. And you know what? It takes that, and it takes a family. But mainly the coaches I had and the teachers I had, I can't thank them enough. And I probably didn't thank them enough at that time. But that's why I'm here.
Yeah, it's pretty special when you think about it. How many individuals it takes to get to these special stages like you did at BYU, and I got to imagine one of those individuals that was pretty special in helping you grow as a player was Lavelle Edwards. What was Lavelle like in those early years? Because I remember the clips of him thinking, like, I'm going to get hired and probably just get fired in a few years. Like, that's what it was for BYU football coaches before him. What was Lavelle like in those early times?
Well, he was the reason BYU got the start they did when they brought him on. But that second year, he was worried he was going to get fired. And we're 0-3. And then we tied Colorado State. So we're 0-4, actually. And turned it around somehow. We had some team meetings with Gary Scheide and Chris Crow and Doug Adams and all these older guys. I mean, I was only there 2 years then. And we had a meeting, come to Jesus meeting, if you will, and said, you know what, we got to turn this thing around. And we went undefeated the rest of the season, got picked to go to the Fiesta Bowl, won the WAC championship, and it was all because of Lavelle. Now, let me tell you, Lavelle and Dave Cragthorpe and all the other coaches are a little different. Lavelle's quiet until you upset him. And he's been known to slam his fist down on the table too. But he was like a father figure to all of us. And it's kind of special that their family's still friends of mine. And I've talked to James and Patty recently, and I keep in touch with them. But Lavelle he was one of those kind of guys, soft-spoken, but you knew, don't be late. If you're not 10 minutes early, you're late to, whatever. And I've golfed with him. I was supposed to golf with him a couple weeks before he passed, and had planned on meeting him in St. George. And anyway, I'll never forget the guy. I ran for sheriff in Boise one time. I was a police officer, and I ran for sheriff, and he did a radio ad for me. I mean, the guy was very special to all of us. And he's one of the only coaches I've ever known that knew every player's first and last name and most of their wives.
Wow.
The guy was amazing. I can't say enough about the guy. The guy, he's the reason a lot of us made it as far as we did.
What do you feel, if you were to describe yourself as a player, Jeff, when you were at BYU, what were your strengths? What were your best attributes you feel as a running back?
I was too small, and I didn't weigh enough, so they kept trying to help me gain weight. But really, Mitch, I was afraid. I was afraid. When I got there, I drove down here by myself for the first time in a pickup truck that broke down, and a state trooper helped me get my truck fixed and to BYU for my first day here by myself, and I knew nobody. I was on my own. No family came with me. I came by myself, and I was 175 pounds my first year, 6 foot, 175 pounds, and I wanted to be 6'2", 225, and it never happened. So people ask me, what's it like to get hit by, some of those guys from Arizona State and Arizona. When they hit you, they're the ones that get up, and then they help you up. And I got racked up a few times, but I never had a knee injury, and I missed 2 games in the whole 4 years. And really, I could have played, but they wouldn't let me, I think. But, I had to move, but I had no outside speed. These guys that, had that outside speed, they're the guys that went to the pros and did all this and that. But I ran hard, put my head down, my feet kept, just trying to do what I could do to help the team. And I had a lot of people help me. Man, Keith Uparesa and Dave Hubbard and oh my gosh, Chuck Carlson was our center, and Orrin Olson was our center for 2 years. Those kind of guys, Keith Uparesa, Dave Mateer. I mean, I can think of all of these guys. Kelly Harris, who's still a good friend today. And I still talk to a lot of these guys. Brad Oates, one of my best friends. We talk. I was in Dallas for a while, and him and I did a lot of stuff together when I was working there. So I got lucky. I'll be honest with you. I was at the right place at the right time. A couple guys got hurt. Mel Olson came to me, and he says, "What do you think about moving up?" I said, "What are you talking about? Look how big those guys are." And he says, "Well, I've talked to Coach Edwards and Dave Cragthorpe, and we're going to give you a shot." So like halfway through my freshman season, I got the chance to start and started for the next 4 years. Lucky. I was lucky.
What, the early years, and I think Lavelle Edwards' time at BYU is kind of, when people look at it from afar, they always think of the passing game. But the running game was so critical to BYU's offenses. But was that air raid passing attack, was that kind of the vision, or even early on? Because people forget, Pete Van Valkenburg led the nation in rushing, and then you took over and became the all-time leading rusher in BYU football history.
But now you got to remember, we caught a lot of passes out of the backfield too, so we were glad to catch a pass. But yeah, I get a little upset that they threw so much. The reason I went to BYU, Dave Cragthorpe and Lavelle Edwards, but because Pete Van Valkenburg, what he did the year before, and I thought, this is a running team. Running backs don't want to go to a passing team. Yeah. They want to go to somewhere where they're going to run the ball. And I just loved running the ball. and I said, give it to me every time. I'd get to the huddle, and I said, "Gary, give it to me." He goes, "We're going to pass." So I said, okay. So anyway, it was different, but it was also a beautiful thing to see what we did. And to go to 2 bowl games and win 2 championships in 4 years. A lot of kids play in college and never get to see that. We were the luckiest guys. We would have done it. I mean, I'd like to go back. Let me go back a second. If I had a chance to do it over, I'd work twice as hard as I ever did. I never worked hard enough. Things came to me. Guys got hurt. I got moved up. Now, did I earn the spot? Maybe, maybe not. But when I got the spot, I wasn't going to relinquish that spot. I was going to stay in that. Nobody was going to take me out of that spot. And I was at the right time, the right place at the right time. Really.
One of the great wins in BYU history was when BYU took down Arizona State in 1974.
It's a great game.
Take us through that game. Arizona State, I believe, was in the top 15 nationally. They were a WAC powerhouse, Arizona State was. And
yes, they were.
Just that moment, that game, and the build-up, and just kind of take us through everything with that week and that win.
Well, I don't think we'd ever beat them before that very much. And we all got together again as a group and said, you know what, let's do our job. Let's get out there and take it to these guys. And I was so excited. I couldn't stop jumping up and down. And I had a couple pretty good plays in that game and helped us get a couple scores. It was awesome. And to think of Frank Cush and Vince Lombardi and some of these guys that I grew up idolizing. I used to know the Vince Lombardi Creed by heart. I could recite that thing. Frank Cush was just like him. But there was another guy just like him. Dee Pancras was my coach in high school, and he was just like those guys. He was just another model of a Frank Cush and a Vince Lombardi. And to get that game under our belt, we knew we were going places. I really believed that everybody on that team at that time thought we were going to win a championship. Unheard of.
Yeah.
And, I remember Frank Cush, how mad he'd get on the sideline. And I ran down the sideline one time, and one of his guys missed me, and I got a few more yards, and he ran over and grabbed that guy. "You can't stop that little guy." He goes, "What's wrong with you?" I mean, he pretty much threw the guy back on the sideline. Yeah. I think, Frank Cush was a tough guy. And it meant a lot to us, and I think it meant a lot to our team, and I think for the momentum of the football program. I
was going to say, because after that win, did it feel like, and you guys can win any game that you play?
Yes, we felt that way. But let me tell you, when Bob Brunig, now every time wherever I went, Bob Brunig, I don't know if you know that name or not.
I'm not sure.
He was a star for Arizona State, and he'd hit me every time. And I'd say, "Bob, the ball's on the other side of the field." He goes, "Frank Cush told me to hit you every time." And then he'd help me up. Guys like that. But they were good. And we got one. We snuck one in on them.
Are you kind of excited coming to present day that Arizona State and Arizona are back in the same league as BYU? That's got to be pretty cool.
And Utah.
Yeah, and Utah too.
You know what? We never lost to Utah the whole time I was there.
Not many BYU players could say that. I mean, going through this list, a lot of these players, I mean, Lavelle had that run of like 11 straight years where he was taking down Utah, but I mean, nowadays, like some of these BYU players, they don't experience wins. You got to no blemishes against the Utes.
Yeah, those were special games, and I think some of my best games.
What was the rivalry like during those times? Was it is it heated as it feels like it is these days?
It was ugly.
Yeah,
it was, and I don't understand it. You know, guys would get their cars keyed out in the parking lot and stuff, and you know, it is crazy. And to think that the guys got to do stuff like that and hate each other. I've got friends, LDS friends, non-LDS friends, and some of them are Utah people, and they will never budge. They will not root for the blue, and it just drives me crazy. I ask people when I meet them on a plane or wherever we're at, if you're from Utah, are you a BYU or a Utah fan? You know. Yeah, it's crazy. I don't like it to be that hot. I really don't. You know, Boise State had a great run. They're still a great team, but you know they had a couple teams, same deal. But it ended up being BYU there for a while, and we couldn't beat them. What
was the moment that made you realize, wow, this thing is just? I guess I got to imagine that coming from Boise, you probably didn't know much. Again, the BYU Utah rivalry, had no idea of it.
No idea.
What made you realize, wow, this thing is just off the charts intense?
Well, when you're in Rice-Eccles Stadium, it's crazy. And, you know, I loved the Whittinghams are friends of mine. Kyle's a great guy. His dad was one of my coaches. You know, he was a defensive coach, but he was one of our coaches. And to see them go to Utah and you know, Sataki, all these guys, it seems like they leave BYU and they go to Utah for some reason. I didn't understand it, but I know it's a money deal and stuff like that. But you know, Kyle Whittingham, he's still a gracious guy, and he doesn't have hate for BYU. He loved BYU. But a lot of the players, and I'm telling you, I don't know anything red. I threw everything away after my son was done playing baseball that was red. I did it for 3 years, and it really kind of hurt me to have to wear that red hat. You know, my son doesn't get it. You know, he knows there's a rivalry, but you know he does not get the feel the.
So you're maybe not taking the page from Kalani's book of Kalani says there shouldn't be hate in people's heart. Like we love Utah when they're not playing us. Yeah. There's that hatred.
So why are they now following us to the Big 12?
Yeah.
You know, I don't want to have that again. Come on, go somewhere else. Yeah, it was sad, but you know what? It is what it is, and Utah is a great place for football.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun seeing BYU and Utah rekindle that rivalry. It's going to be cool to see the BYU ASU rivalry because that was truly a special matchup for BYU, and that 74 win was huge to elevate BYU football. And later that season, you noted that you got the chance to play in a bowl game, which, look, it's not like bowl games today, you know, you got a bowl for pretty much everyone, and now players are opting out. Back then, it was you got 10 bowls, and awesome. You go to a bowl game, that is an amazing reward. You went to the Fiesta Bowl in 1974. What was that experience like?
Out of this world.
Really?
It was awesome. You know, you get there, and everybody meets you at the plane, and they have people carry your bags, and they've got banners, and these people they're not either BYU or Oklahoma State fans. They're local people that are, you know, picking and choosing. But they walk you to the hotel with your bags, and they take you to these wonderful dinners, and they give you watches and I mean all kinds of stuff. And it's kind of one of those unrealistic growing up that you'd ever think of yourself being in a bowl game like that. And you're right. Today there's bowl games for anything. You win 6 games, you go to a bowl game. Back then. And the other thing I have a gripe about, none of the statistics in any of the bowl games back then counted.
Great point.
And now today, they've got 11, 12, 13 games. And so it seems to me like throw the records out. And I know they're meant to be broken. And I never thought of anything. I never thought of breaking Pete Van Valkensburg record. It didn't matter to me. I wanted to win football games. Yeah. And Pete's a good guy. And one of his brothers was one of my roommates for a while. Those guys, you know, you think of coming here, and they're local. They were in the area. And to do what he did, and it gives you a target, I guess. It gives you something to shoot for, but it's not like you want to just go break his record. You know? But yeah, the bowl games are awesome, I can't believe we drew Oklahoma State both times. I got a little lippy the first one and said, we're going to kill them like we killed Utah, and they come after me because of what I said, and I learned then. It was a tough learning curve there. Don't say anything, just go out and do your job. And if Gary hadn't got hurt, we'd have won that game.
Well, I wanted to ask about that. When Scheide gets hurt, what's kind of running through the team's mind in that moment?
Air just went out of the balloon. It just, man, it like hit us in the guts. He was so good, and we were on the move again, and I mean, I think it was 16-6 or something.
Yep.
We had the game, and he gets a dislocated shoulder or whatever, and out of the game, and we're thinking. And Mark Giles, he was our punter and our second-string quarterback. He had never been thrown into anything like that. So bless his heart for doing what he did, but he's not Gary.
Yeah,
and I love Gary. The guy's awesome. Yeah, he was one of the best. So.
What made Gary so special? He's on this top 100 list, of course, too. I mean, he's an all-timer. He really got the quarterback factory going under Lavelle.
I think he doesn't get as much credit as he deserves.
He doesn't, and he was a special player coming from the JUCO ranks. I mean, you could say in BYU history among the JUCO quarterbacks, Sark, but Scheide's probably. Like those are the two greatest JUCO transfers, and Scheide's one of the all-timers. What was he like as a teammate?
Awesome. He wouldn't let you get down. He'd put his arm around you and stuff, and he took control in that huddle. And I'd talk to him, and I'd say, "Hey, give it to me." He said, "Okay. What do you want, 21 or 20 dive?" And no, he was good. And him and Jay Miller had a heck of a run there. And I'll tell you what, to do what Gary did in only 2 years to do it, if he'd had 4 years here, think of what it would have been like.
Yeah.
And I love all of them, Ty Detmer, Jim McMahon, all those guys. I know them, and Ty Detmer's a good friend, and he's one of the best ever. And when I was a senior, McMahon lockered next to me. He was a freshman, and he waited his turn. But Gary started it, doesn't get enough credit, and still to this day, if I see him, I'll give him a big hug.
Do you ever kind of take a step back when you said that you were with Jim McMahon his freshman season during your senior year? Do you kind of ever take a step back and just marvel at the quarterbacks that were coming through like during your time? I mean, you had Gary Scheide, you had Gifford Nilsson, Mark Wilson, Jim McMahon. I mean, these are not only BYU greats, just football greats.
Phenomenal.
All-timers.
Every one of those guys, I'll be honest with you, whatever they said they were going to do, they did. It's not like they were just mouthing it. These guys, you listen to them. Mark Wilson was awesome. I love that guy. And he was one of the best. And Gifford and I have been friends since freshman year. We were freshmen together. And a little story about him hitting golf balls from the dorms over towards Utah Valley at the time was across the street. And I said, "We're going to get thrown off the team." He goes, "No," he says, "this is what we're going to remember in 30 years. Stuff like that. And Gifford, I still love that guy too. We did a deal with Lavelle when he got put into the Humanitarian Hall of Fame there at Boise, and Gifford showed up, and me, and there's a couple of others. Dave Cragthorpe was there. We drove together, and I mean, there were so many quarterbacks, and really there again, where's a running back going to go?
Yeah.
You could have probably got a few more better running backs that time if they wouldn't have been passing so much, but it was working.
Do you ever, because, it feels like the ground attack was just so synonymous with football at that time. Do you ever, were you happy with your decision to go to BYU that became known for the passing game?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Where else can you go and win 2 championships and go to 2 bowl games during that era? Yeah. I second-guessed myself. I thought about going back to Boise State. They tried to recruit me again. My brother was a year behind me in football and at school, and he was a running back at Boise State, and his coach came down and said, "Come back and play with your brother." And it was a dream. We always wanted to do that, and I was going to pull the plug. And I had a guy, and you probably remember the golf coach name, Carl Tucker.
Yep.
And those guys, they set me down in the Richards building there and said, "You're not leaving," because they got word of that I might be trying to pull the, and because a lot of it was because we were passing so much. I thought, maybe go somewhere else, but there's no portal then.
Yeah.
There's no way you can do any of this stuff that they're doing today. and I don't like it. And I don't like this money deal. I don't like I'm kind of with Nick Saban on some of that stuff. And anyway, I thought about going back. I really did, because my parents only got to come to a few games. My dad wanted to watch them all, and he was upset when I went to BYU instead of Boise State because he wanted to watch all the games. I don't blame him. And it's funny because I sat at the kitchen table one night, we're having dinner, and I'd prayed about it. And I said to my dad, and my dad wasn't a praying guy, and he wasn't a member of the church or anything. And I said, Dad, I'm going to BYU. And he was just floored.
Yeah.
And I said, I prayed about it last night, and I woke up this morning with that on my mind, and I'm going to call Coach Cragthorpe and tell him I'm signing.
Wow.
It's 8:01 on sign day. Him and his wife showed up at my front door of my house. So I've been friends ever since.
Wow, that's pretty special. What was campus life like in the 70s at BYU?
A lot of walking.
Yeah.
A lot of stairs. It was big.
Mm-hmm.
Unlike anything I'd ever seen. I think, what we have, 25,000, 30,000 students in. It was crazy. And there again, I had a lot of help. I went to 4 years of college, and I needed help. They gave me a tutor one time. My teachers would give me extra credit. I don't understand. I know football is precious to everybody there, but I had a lot of people in that school help me get my grades up and stay eligible. Campus was awesome, but it was so far from one class to the next. And there were 300 people in these stadium TV classes.
Wow.
Even then, I mean, it was huge. And really, I didn't do as good as I should have. I should have worked harder there, and I didn't.
But was there more focus on football?
Oh yeah. And really, at that time, we were on a pedestal. When what we did the second year, and then the third and the fourth year, I think we kind of it grew big because of what we started, and I'm just so blessed to be a part of it.
Yeah.
I mean, it was one of those things that most kids can't even envision. That school is huge. The football stadium's huge from where I'm at that time, 73, 4, 5, and 6. We were feeling growing pains, and somehow we did what we did.
Did you want to play in the NFL?
Yeah, I did. I went to St. Louis.
Yeah.
I went for a few months there, and now I don't know if you remember or had read anything about my senior season. Got put in the hospital, got knocked out, had to swallow my tongue, whatever. You can't do that, but they said I started to swallow my tongue, and the Utah guys were right there, put a roll of tape in my mouth. They had me stretched down so tight to that gurney, I thought I was hurt. I got hit in the chest, got whiplash, and tried to swallow my tongue. And, well, it's my second or third concussion, really is what it was. So I'm part of the CTE study right now. And when I got to St. Louis, I got my bell rung again. And I was there in May, June, July 15th. We started the regular practice. The rookie practice was in May, and Brados was there. We drove together. He put his arm around me and said, "Come on, we're going places." And I got concussion. Had to lay out a couple practices again, and I just felt like, you know what, this isn't for me.
Yeah.
And that was on like the 1st of August. And I said, I'm heading out. And everybody tried talking me into staying. And the coaches, I went and talked to Don Coryell, Joe Gibbs.
Yep.
What a great man, running back coach. And I know him today. I worked with FedEx for several years. And he was a FedEx racing guy. And I actually walked up to him one day at one of their deals. They had the race cars out there, and Kenny Hamlin and all these guys. And I said, Coach Gibbs, Jeff Blanc. And he goes, BYU? So he
Wow.
still remembered me.
That's cool.
And so it was, you know what, I got there. I was kind of upset. I signed as a free agent, and I didn't get drafted, so kind of blew the air out of my whatever. And so I had a chance to go to Denver, San Francisco, or St. Louis. And being Brad Oates was there and had blocked for me all these years,
Yeah.
I decided to go with him. And was that a good move? I don't know. I maybe should have gone to 49ers or to Denver. But I think the headaches and the concussions, I've had 3 of them, and I do have an issue. I've been to the University of Utah on this the VA. I don't know if you know anything about it. So VA has put it on, and they pay for all the MRIs and this light gear. They give you it's called light therapy, and Larry Carr got it, and he's a big guy in the middle of this whole program, and he's saving a lot of people, really. The CTE used to be you couldn't figure out if you had a problem until you had died and they cut your head open and checked your brain. And so I'm going to it every few months at the University of Utah.
How's that experience been for you so far?
Well, it's enlightening. I mean, to see the brain and the white matter, and I'm learning a lot of stuff about it. And they're doing combat soldiers and football players. That's who they're studying.
Wow!
Because of the pounding and the heads and this. If anybody's had a concussion, you know what I'm talking about. And he used to say, I got my bell rung, I saw stars. Well, a few times I saw big stars.
Wow!
But I still wanted to be out there, and they had no protocol back then.
Wow!
Those days are scary, and
the helmets were nowhere near the padding and just
nothing.
Well, I mean, really, what did it even? Was there much of anything in inside those helmets back then?
Well, the first ones, no, and then they went to the water helmets. They had the little pads in there with water filled in them, and I remember getting knocked out one time, and the water came out of them, and
wow! So
I probably hit plastic to my head, but yeah, they've come a long ways, and the way they can hit, and they don't use your head, and it didn't matter back then. And you know what? You got right back up and went out there because I didn't want to stay out. I wanted to be on the field every minute.
Wow.
Every football player.
Well, and it reminds me too of I think a lot of football players. I mean, in the NFL, I know Max Hall. He did that when he was with the Cardinals, and he didn't, because if you get hurt, you're going to lose your job, and it's just that probably was tough to be in that situation where you felt like
I better go.
Did you feel like you had to just go out or else you'd lose your spot?
That's it. You didn't want to lose your spot. It was too hard to get it.
Yeah.
And, it's kind of crazy, too, if you think about our team doctors. Great guys, my gosh. Metcalf and Vance and some of these guys and our trainers. BYU had the best. We had the best trainers. We had the best managers out there that had it was awesome. And I think if you go to SC and some of these other bigger schools, it might have dwarfed what we had. But for us, it was amazing. Yeah. And just to have the camaraderie with all those guys and in the off season and stuff, it was tough to leave to go back home.
Yeah. Were you still, all these years later, Jeff, do you still glad that you made that decision to go to BYU and play and pursue football because you had baseball success too?
Yeah, absolutely. Best decision I ever made in my life. And it took a prayer, but it worked. And I'm not looking back and second guessing. I'm just, like I said, I would like to go back, and I told this to Coach Helm the other day. He was my running back coach for 2 years, J.D. Helm. He was with the Chiefs for 16 there with Andy Reid, and he's retired in Overland Park, Kansas. And I talked to him during both Super Bowls, back and forth, and I told him a while back, I said, J.D., his name's John Helm, but we called him J.D., I said, I would love to go back and start over and work twice as hard as I ever did. And he goes, hold it just a minute. He goes, while I was there, you worked pretty darn hard, Jeff, or you wouldn't have been playing. So, I mean, you got to put it in perspective. But like I said earlier, it came easy and sometimes too easy, and I didn't have to work hard enough. We had guys come in that I know were faster and stronger and all this stuff, and somehow I just kept working out for me.
How special since your playing days has been the BYU brotherhood? I talked with Chris Hoke, a former BYU great defensive lineman. He brings up that brotherhood. How would you describe that brotherhood that's in this BYU football program?
Well, it's probably, unless you've been there, it's hard to pinpoint exactly. But I will tell you this: I had a roommate by the name of Bob Biddy from Richfield, Utah, and we're still best friends today. Wow. He comes up fishing. He bought a place up in McCall, Idaho. So he's coming back. I talked to Brad Oates. I talked to Kelly Harris. I talked to Chuck Carlson, our center. I do stuff. We lived next to them in Henderson and Vegas. And the camaraderie and the brotherhood I could call any time. And what's funny, going cross country, I know where all these guys are. If I break down, if I get close to Dallas, I'm calling Brad Oates. I have a list.
That's amazing.
And then these guys would jump, and I would too. And I have them when they come to Boise, they call. I had Sterling Richards, Golden Richards' brother, was a roommate one year. Gary Shaw, defensive back. I'm telling you, and Giles and all these guys, and Bob Biddy and who else? My gosh, there were so many people. Roger Gorley was a fullback. Todd Christensen was a year behind me, and I got to speak at his funeral, and that was kind of sad. Talked to the Cougar Club, and yeah, he took me under his wing too because he was so big and strong and fast. We called him Toddzilla. He worked out so hard, and he was going places. And he's one of the guys that knew he was going to the pros. The rest of us, if we get a shot, I'll be honest, when I got out of high school, I wasn't going to play football. I was going to go in the Air Force.
Really?
And I went and signed up, and my coaches at Bora and my parents all got together with my quarterback, Tom Cafferty, who went to Oregon. BYU wanted him. He would have been the one right after Gary, but he opted to go to Oregon.
Wow.
A big, tall kid who's a great quarterback. And him and I were both going in the Air Force. We'd had it with football. We were going to take our shotguns and shoot our footballs. And anyway, these coaches called me in their office, and my parents were freaking out. And they said, "You've got this opportunity. You got 4 years of college paid for. You're going. You come back as an officer after you get out of college if you want to go in, but you're not going in until after you're done." Well, then the football and everything else comes, first. But yeah, the camaraderie, but with the coaches, I don't know very many kids, and my son's one of them. He doesn't really care for his coaches, it seems like, and they're still my best friends. All the coaches I had that are still alive are still I could call on them anytime.
Wow.
And they know when I was a police officer in Boise, if something happened, they called on me, and I was there. So it's not only college camaraderie, but even the high school buddies I have. I still associate with 3 or 4 guys on our high school football team. I don't know if you ever heard of Bora High School in Boise. It's one of the tops.
Yeah.
Southern Idaho Conference. Been tops forever. We had 5 guys on our team our senior year go to Division I college.
Wow.
And you never hear of that anymore. And yeah, it was awesome, and really you can't put a price tag on the friendship and the camaraderie with these guys, and I love them all. Really, there's I can only think of maybe 1 or 2 guys that didn't last, that maybe I should have been a better friend to them or whatever. But yeah, the camaraderie's awesome, and it's still there after 50 years.
Pretty special.
50 years, that's amazing.
Do you ever get the chance to connect with? I know, and I bring this up because he's such a proponent of the alums. Is Kalani Sitake? Do you ever get a chance to connect with Kalani?
No,
and just
I haven't.
Get to know him.
I will this fall. I will when we go back, and I just have never. I was there. I know Robbie Bosco really well. Tom Homo. Yeah, when I was in Utah working for 8 years with a company that took care of lost freight for FedEx called Northwest Research. We had a huge donation that we were able to give stuff, the chin straps and T-shirts and stuff like that. So I got to get in with those guys, and when they came to Vegas to play, I went to the luncheon, and Homo called us down and had us come down and participate with them and stuff. And so yeah, but Kalani, I don't know him, and I think I might have saw him at Lavelle's funeral. He talked, I think, and Patty talked, and did you have a chance to go to that?
I did, yes.
It's the biggest funeral I've ever been at in my life. I mean, all the good ones. Steve is there.
Amazing.
Young, and Jim McMahon, all of us. I mean, yeah, I can't even. I don't know what it'd have been like without him.
Yeah. So. Well, Jeff, it has been an absolute honor to look back on your time at BYU and talk about your career with the Cougars and the impact, and it's been a pleasure to talk and man. So how's life treating you in Boise right now?
Well, probably the best place in the world to live.
Yeah,
we have a cabin up in the hills, and we go fishing up there on the Salmon River, and it's home.
It's awesome.
I was gone, too many years. I was in Vegas. I was in Dallas for a few years. I was Salt Lake, Lehigh. Yeah, I've been around, and I miss Utah, and I have kids here. I have a son and a daughter and 4 grandkids here, and it's tough. I mean, I'm missing out on a lot of stuff, and just like last night, got to see I mean, it brings tears to my eyes. He's 18. He's getting ready to go on his mission. Yet he had a tennis match, and I got to see him whoop this young man from Fremont. And then I got to go see my granddaughters, 12 years old, who are stars of their soccer team. I mean, it's just, you look back, and I had 5 children, and one of them passed at 36, my second daughter, and she played soccer at MSU Billings. And I don't know, my daughter, my oldest daughter, was a cheerleader at Utah State and stayed in Cragthorpe's basement, but she got a half scholarship to go be a cheerleader. Who heard of that? And anyway, she's got 4 of my grandkids here, and I don't get to see them enough. So I'm glad to be back. You brought me back, I'll be honest with you. I didn't want to do a Zoom.
Yeah.
If I'm coming to Utah, I wanted to come and see you and meet you, and I hear good things about you. Everybody I've talked to, they said you're one of the best. So keep it up.
Well, I appreciate it, Jeff, and I appreciate, again, your perspective and insight, and just man, just again the appreciation of BYU football history. Man, it's just really cool. It's really special, and thank you again for joining me, and hope to continue to have conversations in the future.
I can't wait to have you at our 50-year reunion, Mitch. You need to be there.
I will be,
and I'll tell you what, it's an honor for me. I mean, after 50 years, my kids are going, they're still talking about you over there. What's going on? You know, and they think it's all over and done and said with. But You know what? Just getting that text the other day you sent me on Facebook Messenger, whatever it was, I kind of fell out of my chair a little bit, thinking, there's no way. There's no way I'm one of the 100 top. And since 1922, I was trying to figure out, they probably had 70 to 90 scholarships every year. With all the people that have gone through this program, you don't even know. I couldn't sleep that night. It was such an honor to be included in those other 99. I mean, thank you.
Well-deserved, and again, appreciate all of you listeners out there checking out the list, 100 greatest BYU football players of all time. You can see the full list on KSLSports.com, KSL News Radio, KSL 5 TV, and the KSL Sports Zone.